Hello and welcome to another episode of The Conversation. Today we have Arujuna Sivanathan in the studio. Hello and welcome to the show.
How do you do, Raj?
Good, good. Hi Arjuna. Just before going into the content, let's just talk about yourself. So you are representing British Tamil Conservatives. What made you to start British Tamil Conservatives, or why, the like-minded people started that organization?
Okay, so it was very clear in 2008 that there was going to be a Conservative government in 2010. Now, what we did was we looked at the Canadian experience, where the Canadian Tamil diaspora worked pretty much exclusively with the Liberal Party. And when a Canadian Conservative government was returned to power, they were effectively caught with their pants down. So we formed the British Tamil Conservatives in order to act as a pressure group within the Conservative Party, very similar to the Conservative Friends of Israel model that has existed for a very long time.
I mean, traditionally, there is a notion where Tamils in the Western countries that they support left or liberal or kind of a Labour kind of values. But in the Tamil society, it's not the reality, as you have actually told me off the camera before we came into this conversation. So can you elaborate a bit more about, because you were born in Jaffna, Vattukotte?
I was born in Colombo,
okay.
But my family, my inheritance is from Vattukotte.
Right.
So I'm from Vattukotte, all my family are indigenous Vattukotte.
And then you moved to Australia?
Yes, after the 83 riots, my family moved to Australia.
And then from there you came to the UK?
To do my postgraduate studies.
And you found UK as a home. Now, so what kind of traditional links you bring into these political values? Because you agree with my statement before, because normally Tamils align with Labour or liberal leanings.
Indeed. I was brought up in a very conservative, value-based household. And I think Tamil households intrinsically are extremely conservative in their outlook. And therefore, the default position was to support a conservative-leaning party. And if you looked at how Tamils voted in Ceylon or Sri Lanka, while they were in the north or the east, they voted for the Tamil Representative Party, so that might be the Ilangai Tamil Arasu Katchi or the Tamil Congress. And when they came to Colombo, they all voted for the United National Party. So this reflected in many ways the conservative nature of Tamils, because Tamils are professionals, Tamils are into commerce, into business. Tamils dominated all the top professions and businesses. And so they were drawn to conservative values-based parties. Now, of course, the UNP behaved atrociously in the late 70s, from the 60s onwards, particularly in 1983, orchestrating the riots. So the Tamils repudiated the UNP. But at least until then, Tamils supported conservative values-based parties.
So you bring back these values like accumulation of wealth and kind of the strong traditional family links and closeness, that's the conservative value which actually reflected in you, because partly when you started this party support group as PTC. Now let's just talk about a little bit about yourself, because you were in 3 different continents.
Indeed.
Right, from the Asian continent or the South subcontinent to the Australian and the Europe now. So what was your early days like in Australia, like when you were brought up?
It was a dramatic change. I grew up in a very comfortable household where my father was a successful lawyer. His clients included the president, he was Premadasa, he was an advocate, he was the advocate for the Wickramasinghe family, and the then Sri Lankan Foreign Minister Hamid. And so he had a very successful practice. The 1983 riots turned everything on its head. And we went to Australia and we had to start life from scratch. And this very deeply ingrained in me intrinsic Tamil values of hard work, perseverance, risk-taking, to place your own capital at risk. And even if you fail once, even if you fall once or twice, to get up, dust yourself off, and then try again. And I think these are the intrinsic Tamil values that I think makes me who I am.
So when you move into the UK, but before that, I think you actually served in the forces in Australia and went through the training.
Very briefly. It was more fun. I think every young boy has fantasies of running around with a gun, and I was just merely indulging my fantasies of running around with a gun.
So, but you would have actually learned some disciplines and how the quite a lot of things that the way of life would have been changed during that 2 years or 1 year period.
Indeed. I suppose you learn those disciplines when you go to boarding school. If you're a boarder in a school, routine is inculcated in you. And I think one thing my very brief experience of the Australian Army taught me was routine, basic discipline, things which I still carry with me today.
So when you moved to Europe, what you seen different? Like obviously you have actually, I think probably in your teen or like late teens, or like you came to do your masters. Or
I was 22 when I arrived here. I think the most striking difference was that Australia then was still to some extent, or could be characterized as being parochial and reactionary. Whereas Europe had already begun to evolve into a more values-based society. So it was much easier to make headway, particularly in business and in the private sector, than it was in Australia. In Australia, you still had to be a WASP with the right family links to progress rapidly. That's changed in Australia now. The generation now that's growing up and who have gone to university are doing very well, but 22 years ago, it was very different.
So, it's quite different experience, isn't it? Living in these 3 continents, and then when you came here, you did your masters and your PhD in Glasgow,
Yes.
University of Glasgow. So once you have finished, I mean, if you look at it, it's a different country in a way. It's a different nation in Scotland. But do you see anything different in Scotland growing up, like when you're doing your PhD in terms of because maintaining your Tamil values, keep in mind, because you entrenched values,
Yes.
you carried away from you to a different continent. So you lived in Australia, then you moved into UK.
Yes.
So in the UK, when you was actually practicing, especially in Scotland, in here, did you see any difference?
In Scotland, there wasn't at that time, in the early 90s, a very big Tamil community. So I really wasn't plugged into the community. I was plugged into the university community. But my life experiences, particularly the trauma of 1983, had these values ingrained in me. And I knew that if I carried those values with me, it would only be a matter of time before you could break new ground in the UK, and that's what I think held me through and showed me the path.
That's good. So when you successfully completed your degree, so you became briefly into markets, and you were actually working as a trader, a very
Indeed.
Successful one.
I was one of those awful credit derivative traders.
So, in this country we don't actually say that, but people do sometimes. So what actually made you to switch from being a successful trader, because obviously you make a lot of money, to become a small business? It's the aspiration is high for Tamil youth to actually be in the banking or in any kind of trading industry, and it's common these days, and obviously there is pain associated with it.
Of course.
So what actually made you to come out of that and start your own business? What was the inspirational moment, or what was the thought process behind it?
Ultimately, if you want to be a master of your own destiny, you have to strike out on your own. And for me, that was the driving force behind starting my business. I, in fact, started my business while I was working. Within 5 years of working in the city, I started to slowly build my business up with the objective of exiting by the time I was 40. The events of 2007, the crash, and 2008 and 9, when the good times stopped rolling, then that made my decision much easier to go into business full time. And it is certainly very rewarding. I think what banking does is it gives you a relatively comfortable income stream, but you don't have any equity upside. And if you want to build equity, then the only way you can really do that is to start your own business.
So that was the turning point, because when you actually started your own business and then you thought about giving something back, and that's where the good times actually met, where you got to know about this British Tamils, conservatives, or like these small like-minded groups. So I can actually understand the dynamics. Just a little go back a bit. For the viewers, for the youngsters looking at, just can you give your experience as being a successful banker, like what they should do, because there's quite a lot of aspirations in terms of getting into the industry, because that itself is quite hard, right? So what do you want to say to that?
Things have clearly changed since the late 90s or late to mid 90s when I started working. Despite having a PhD, a master's and a PhD, every morning I was expected to bring in the coffees, buy the lunches. Despite being a vegetarian, I had to go to McDonald's and get everyone's bacon and egg sandwiches and McMuffins on a Friday morning, because everyone had a very big Thursday night and were all hungover. I had to do the photocopying. If someone wanted their shoes polished, I had to take it to the boot cleaner and get it polished. These are very grounding experiences that you're taught in a trading floor. So it is no respecter of qualification or pedigree or breeding. Ultimately, it only respects results. So it doesn't matter what background you come from. You might go to Eton and you might come with an aristocratic pedigree with a silver spoon in your mouth, but on a trading floor, if you can't deliver results, that counts for nothing.
That's just ultimately boils down to results.
Pure and simple. It is the ultimate meritocracy.
That's good. Okay, let's just go back to the conversation which we were having about British Tamil conservatives. Initially you gave the brief of why, the reason behind it, and obviously that's up to your background and the values, how you've been brought up. So then what was your objectives of this organization? Like, what are you going to achieve in real terms?
The objective was to influence policy with respect to Sri Lanka. I was there in Parliament Green in 2009 when our community was at its lowest ebb. We were there with 250,000 people sitting down, and the question was, where do we go from now? Tens of thousands had been slaughtered, and what do we do? And at that point, the voices within the Conservative Party were not supportive of the Tamils. We had to turn this on its head, and through hard work, digging deep into our pockets and some generous donors, spending 60, 70 hours a week, driving tens of thousands of miles across the country to meet MPs and ministers, we managed to change things in the UK, where today no Conservative MP will even visit Sri Lanka. Certainly not on a Sri Lankan government-paid trip, but even if it's sponsored by a charity like the Fountain of Goodness, was it?
Yeah, that's the Muralidharan's Foundation. Yeah.
Yes, tried to take people, and that was stopped as well. So I think it's changed. The situation has been changed dramatically to delivering an independent international inquiry, to David Cameron going to Jaffna. He visited every refugee camp in the Valley Garment district. He visited Jaffna Library. You have a beautiful photograph of him standing in the balcony of the Jaffna Library, donating books. I mean, who would have envisaged when the library was burnt down 33 years ago that in 2013 a British Prime Minister would be standing in its balcony?
I mean, Yes, this is really a progressive achievement if you really look at the conservative politics here, with how the party support has actually translated into government and so on. But can BTC claim the whole credit on its own?
Not at all. I think what it has been is a community effort. And I think it's the responsibility of every British Tamil to lobby their MP. It is very important that you engage with your MP, irrespective of what political party the MP belongs to. It is, I feel, our bounden duty to do that, because we are in an extremely privileged position here. We live here indulging and enjoying the comforts of the West, while in the north and east, in Ulam, there are people who are subject to the most egregious assaults by the Sri Lankan state, and we have to do something. And to just say, oh, I'm just one person and I can't do anything by myself is not an excuse. One person one person in fact can make a difference.
That's true. One person can actually make, it's the person who can actually make the change. So we look at it like, what's the percentage of people who can actually make the change? Because we know that 95% of the people actually watch the change.
Yes.
Now, it brought me a very interesting point here, that because you said all party support groups are important in a way, because or people have to join up in terms of supporting the MPs and lobbying the MPs in some level, in grassroots level and the high level as well, with the party level as well. Now, there is the critique says normally, when you becomes party support, your allegiance, your obviously your support and everything with the party, then it actually put the cause as a secondary or third. The priority might change in a way, and also the competition among the party support groups or the activists who is being in the party support groups. So what do you say to this?
Ultimately, it depends on how you choose to function. Clearly, some organizations exist to promote the careers of its members or office bearers. In the BTC, I can safely say that none of us hold political ambitions. So we function as a pressure group. It is a very narrowly funded organization, and what we would like is to grow it. So if anyone in the audience feels that they can contribute in any way, please come and join us. We're looking to grow the organization. This is a community-based organization. We are simply custodians of it, and we're not going to be doing this forever. We might not be doing it for a few years, in a few years from now. And we would like to hand it over to a new generation of motivated British Tamils.
No, definitely, that's a good kind of intro for people who how they can join. But my question was, like, won't you think that the party allegiance, or maybe you can say obviously the party line, of these three organizations or four organizations at the moment, like, you have main four-party politics that the UK is going to get into, but we don't know what the landscape is going to be. So if there is four different party support groups within Tamils, how do you see that they can effectively complement each other, or in a way not compromising the cause?
It's incumbent upon those organizations to work with broader community organizations, engage with broader community organizations, and help set the agenda and work towards common objectives. Once again, I think in the BTC, we are not politicians, nor do we harbour political ambitions. So therefore, what it makes us are activists. And I think there's a very clear distinction between a politician and an activist. An activist exists to exert pressure to bring about changes in policy, whereas politicians seek careers in politics. And in our case, we engage with all community organizations, helping set the agenda and bring about changes in policy.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the word activist you have actually mentioned twice, because you're active in terms of activism and so on, which actually defines that the defined line between the party support group or just merely being a party support group and just going forward.
Indeed.
So what might happen next 11 months is crucial. Next 11 months, the whole British landscape can actually change in different things. One is the Scottish referendum, and then afterwards next year we have the parliamentary elections, which is May, I guess. And also it looks like there are 4 parties are competing after the elections and the European Union elections. You can actually see UKIP is actually making some grounds. So your independent observation of this, what do you make of it?
Okay, realistically, the UKIP success can be attributed to a protest vote. And if you look at how the Council on European Elections, the voting patterns in those elections, incumbent parties do far worse than what the Conservative Party did. So in that sense, I'm actually quite optimistic about how the Conservative Party will perform. My central projection is that the Conservatives will win a majority, but I'm not sure how big that majority will be. It probably won't be very big at all. But nevertheless, I look forward to a Conservative government in 2015. From a Tamil perspective, the next 11 months are momentous, both from a domestic political landscape and also internationally. And the objective, the duty of British Tamils is to exploit the run-up to the 2015 general elections. Tamils of all political hues and colours to generate real change in the international scene. This kind of leverage comes only once every 5 years, and it's a golden opportunity for us. And I think there are 2 key things that I think are very important. It is very important that Tamils vote in elections. I think by Tamils voting, it strengthens the voice of the Tamil communities in the corridors of power. That is very important. And the other thing is, I think, by increasing our turnout, we need to increase the number of Tamils who vote as a percentage of the Tamil population. So what I would urge your viewers to do here is to actually register for postal votes or proxy votes, but most certainly postal votes, because that way it is pretty much assured that Tamils will vote. And when parties see a high number of Tamils registered for postal votes, then I think they will also start to take serious note, even more serious note than what they're taking of the Tamils at the moment.
As interesting tips about the postal votes and the voting population, because generally 30 to 35% of people vote in this country, right? So they would like to see what is the percentage of Tamils actually vote in elections. That's what you're trying to say.
Indeed.
Thinking about, you said the next 12 months next 11 months or so, less than 11 months is crucial. Tamils expect a big outcome in March 2015,
yes,
which is the UN Human Rights Council investigations, and recently the investigation started, and it's going to take some time. So now, what do you think the role the organization like BTC is going to play, because it's very important a country like UK put pressure behind this, because as you know, Sri Lanka will never allow investigators to go into the country, so the report is going to be damning in the way, because the evidence are all over them. So once they have all the evidences compiled together, because we have seen already 2 reports, like
yes,
one in the Petrie report and the panel of experts report.
Indeed.
So there's 2 reports. So this third investigation, it's not going to be actually extremely different to it, because there's no access inside. So it's going to follow the similar patterns and investigate all these witnesses from outside.
yes,
And then the objectivity and the credibility will be given to the report.
yes,
Now, once that's on the table, a country like UK or US have serious responsibility in terms of taking forward.
yes.
So running up to that and afterwards, because it's from March to May, the 2 months is crucial in terms of
Yes.
lobbying. So what an organization like BTC can do or will do?
We would be looking to work with community-based organizations to push a specific agenda. I think there needs to be, I think people must learn to understand that being a political pressure group, we're not necessarily experts in international law. What we are very good at is understanding the domestic political scene and bring about changes in policy. Now, formulating the policy itself, while we might have some input into it, should be the responsibility of those involved in the human rights sphere. And we will be looking to complement that rather than necessarily lead that process.
Initially, when we were having this conversation, I think you mentioned that you're a vegetarian.
Indeed.
So what makes you a vegetarian? Like, are you a religious reasons, or is there any other reason?
I was born into a family of vegetarians. Certainly on my mother's side, they were all vegetarian. And so, yes, I did...
so you never actually ate meat?
I did eat meat.
Right.
I did eat meat till I was 22.
From the age of?
From the time I was a child.
Right. So what made you to stop after sometimes?
Now here's, I mean, this is, I really don't want to get into this on television. Perhaps I'll explain to you the reasons why I gave up meat off air. But certainly I think, religion plays a very big part in my life. We have our obligation towards our family temple in Vatukotte. And, I often go on pilgrimages to southern India. So as a result of that, I thought, that was one of the contributing factors as to why I became vegetarian.
So let's just conclude this conversation with, what you would like to say to the people, because we will have conversation follow up, because coming up to the elections as well. But what you would like to actually give as a message as a final conclusion?
It should be the responsibility of every British Tamil to engage with their MP. And by only engaging with your MP, that you can bring about change in British policy. And by bringing about change in British policy with respect to Sri Lanka, you can bring about changes in European policy. You're giving voice to your Tamil brothers, sisters, cousins who are egregiously oppressed in Ulam. And I think if you want to do something, engage. Engage and express your opinion. It's very important. You shouldn't hold back. It is your democratic right as a British national, as someone on the electoral register, to meet your MP and make demands, and you should exercise that right. And also exercise your right to vote. I think by doing both, you'll be surprised at the changes that you as an individual can bring about.
Thank you. So exercise your right to vote, exercise your right to actually meet your MP and push your agenda, what you're actually looking forward, like what you want. Thank you, Arujuna. Thank you very much. Once again, we met Arujuna Sivanathan, banker, an intellectual, conservative, Tamil, then now he is actually an activist in conservative politics, a Tamil activist. So thank you very much for joining for another episode of The Conversation. Goodbye.